let's start here. Hello, Dennis.
Hello, John.
How have you been?
I've been really well. How have you been?
I've been good too.
It's great to hear.
Yeah, me and you went to high school together.
We sure did.
When you were in high school, you were like a pretty prolific BMX bike rider. That was your thing, right?
I wouldn't go as far as to say I was prolific, but I was a BMX rider, yes.
Yeah. How did you get into that?
Um, just all the kids in Bartlett, that's what they did when I was in like fifth grade. So I just did it, and then I really liked it, so I kept doing it.
Did you raced and you like did tricks, right?
No, I didn't race, but I did some stunts. There was behind ECU Middle School, there was a bunch of dirt jumps, and that's where all the like older kids used to go jump these jumps that seemed big at the time, and I would just go watch them do it, and then started trying to do it, and yeah.
You ended up
That's it.
getting pretty good though, right? You went to competitions and summer camps and stuff like that.
Yeah, I competed a bunch. I don't know if I would say I was pretty good. Like I could do some stuff, but like yeah, I wasn't good like some of these kids are.
You were better than anybody in our high school. That's all I remember.
Um, I guess I don't think it really when we were in high school, everyone skateboarded. No one even really BMX. So I guess you can be the best if you're the only person that does it.
So is that why you stopped riding?
No, I stopped riding because I almost killed myself, and yeah, I just started doing other things.
What do you mean you almost killed yourself?
I fell on my handlebars. I was getting ready, like practice for a competition in Ohio, and I fell on my handlebars and ruptured my spleen, and didn't know that I ruptured my spleen at the time, and just went and like sat in my car, and almost like pretty much bled to death in my car, and didn't realize. And thank God my buddy came by the car and saw me in there. I couldn't talk or anything. I didn't know what was wrong with me. And he just looked at me and he's like, I don't know what's wrong with you, but you have to go to the hospital. And he pushed me in the passenger seat and drove me to the first hospital, which luckily was right down the street, but they didn't have the resources to work on me once they figured out what was wrong. And they had to airlift me to another hospital.
Wow.
Where they could operate. And yeah, the doctor said if my buddy Kurt never found me, I would have bled to death.
Wow. So ruptured spleen, that's like internal bleeding?
Yeah. Your spleen holds the majority of the blood that's in your body. And then when it ruptured, all that blood just went into my body. Like I started, like all the area around my stomach was filled with blood. So I was puking, I was shitting, I was like shaking really bad. And I was freezing. Like I kept thinking I was really cold. So I went to my car to turn the heat on. So I just like somehow got to my car, turned the heat on, and was sitting there just shivering. And it was the middle of a snowstorm too, and nobody was outside because we were inside a skate park, and no one really even saw me crash either. So I kind of just like was by myself and crawled off the ramp. And Kurt and my other buddies were coming back from getting food, and I saw them, so I just started honking the horn at them. And I literally couldn't speak. Like I couldn't make words with my mouth. I was just like grunting in pain.
Wow.
And Kurt was like, "You got to go to the emergency room." So he took me, and yeah, Kurt saved my life. So thank you, Kurt.
Yeah. How do you heal a ruptured spleen? What did they have to do?
Well, I was lucky. I got to keep my spleen. I forget the name of the operation, but they just, they went in and kind of repaired it and then let it heal itself. And, yeah, which was very fortunate because it's a common injury, but what happens is you have to get it removed. And then if you get it removed, you got to take some sort of, I think it's like antibiotic or something the rest of your life. Because your body's not producing whatever it would be producing if you had your spleen.
Wow. So what was it? Literally that moment you decided you're just not going to ride anymore?
No, okay. So this is a funny story. So I lived in Austin, Texas at the time, and drove to Ohio, fell on my handlebars, ruptured my spleen, went back to Texas. The doctor told me not to do anything for 6 months. Because like even if like I got lightly hit in my stomach, I could rupture it all over again because it hadn't repaired itself. And so I, like an idiot, I was 18 or 19 years old, was down in Texas and went back to the dirt jumps to ride, like shouldn't even be there. And first jump, boom, I jumped it, nose case to landing, flipped over right on my face, and tore my knee open really bad and had this. They were dirt jumps, so I had the skid mark like down my chest, right over my stomach, and I was freaking the fuck out. Like, am I allowed to swear?
Yeah,
that cool.
Go for it.
Okay, so I was freaking out, thinking like I didn't hurt my spleen, like it didn't hurt, but I just didn't know, and I was paranoid, thinking like I could have re-ruptured it. So instead of going to the hospital, I went back. I went to Walgreens. I got some stuff to stitch up my knee. I didn't stitch it. I glued it and like bandaged it, and then sat there hoping I wouldn't bleed to death. Because if like my dad would have found out that I went back riding my bike after I was just out of the emergency room, yeah, he wouldn't have been too happy. So luckily I didn't die. And
Right.
yeah, no, it wasn't. I still in my head was going to ride BMX bikes, and then I started training MMA that summer, and then that's when I decided like maybe I won't ride it anymore. Which actually I guess I always rode. Like I was then 3 years later, even though I didn't ride, I already had my first fight, and I was getting ready. I had a big fight lined up in Texas, and like a dumbass 3 weeks before that, I went riding and blew out my knee. And then I was out for like a year and a half. So I set back my fighting career like a year and a half because of this stupid bike.
Wow. When did you start riding?
Probably like 1996, 1995, something like that. Just messing around with the kids in the neighborhood.
Like 10 years old.
Yeah. And then just as I got older, got more into it. And then I remember because you used to skateboard and you were rollerbladed too, right?
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. So we used to go do stunts together.
Scrap skate park.
That's probably where we met, I think, was Scrap.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
And so then you're in Austin. So wait, you started training MMA while you were still healing from the spleen injury?
Nah, I mean, no, it wasn't right after. So the spleen injury happened in December, and then I started training in like May. So I was probably relatively healed by then.
Yeah. How did you make the jump from wanting to ride to wanting to do MMA?
Well, I've been around martial arts my whole life, like way even before BMX. And I always did jiu-jitsu, and my dad was big into it. My cousin was big into it. So they kind of just pushed me into the training. And then, so I was down in Texas for school and just riding bikes and stuff. And this guy I knew at the time opened up an MMA gym in Streamwood. So when I came home that summer, I was heavily persuaded into going to the gym. So I went and checked it out and just did some training. And I never had any intention to fight at that time. I just liked learning the moves. And then when I went back to Texas at the end of that summer, I just kept training jiu-jitsu. And I trained for a year or two and then decided like, well, what's the next step in this? Let's try fighting. So
Yeah, what were you going to school for?
Graphic design.
Did you finish that?
No, like an idiot, I didn't. I couldn't. I was terrible at school. I hated doing that stuff, and I freaking all the classes that I needed to take at the beginning, I put off. So I took all the fun classes where you're doing the design and making websites and all that kind of shit. And so then at the end, when I had to go back and do the history classes, I was like, I can't do this. So I just stopped.
Shout out to Mr. Books, our
shout out to Mr. Books. Mr. Books,
high school graphic arts teacher. I think we had a class or two together. Me and you.
We probably had more than a class or two.
Yeah.
I think we were there like all 4 years, weren't we?
Something like that.
Yeah, Books laid the tracks for my my graphic design career, my short-lived career.
Yeah. And so you're in Austin and you're training, and were you in Austin? You were in Austin this whole time, or when did you come back to Illinois?
2009, 10 years ago. That's crazy.
Yeah. And so, what was your first fight like?
What was it like?
Yeah.
It was awesome.
You terrified?
Not at all.
You were prepared?
Yeah, I didn't start getting nervous before fights till way later in my career. It was really weird.
Yeah, why is that?
I don't know. And everybody usually has like when they say they have the opposite, like they're nervous at first, and as they get more experience, they get less nervous. But maybe just I've been in a couple rough fights by that point, and I just realized like what can go down there, and I was fighting better opponents, so just more nerves really.
Right, and so you've been competing this whole time now. You've had like 15 fights.
I've had like 22 fights now.
Oh, wow.
I think.
Okay.
That's professional and amateur.
Okay.
I think. Yeah. I don't know, 2022, I think. Yeah, and, my last fight was this past November.
It seems like MMA might be more dangerous than riding bikes.
uh, well, I think that in MMA you get more like you get little bangs and bruises and little things, but in biking or those extreme sports, like when you go down, you probably don't fall often, but when you fall, they're a lot worse because the concrete is very unforgiving.
Sure.
Yeah, like I don't know. Another thing in a fight, like if you get beat up enough, you can always quit or whatever. You might have a broken nose or something like that. But yeah, BMX accidents seem to be worse, at least in my experience. I'm sure other people have other experiences.
I saw you at a yoga class in Schaumburg, like maybe 10 years ago, something like that.
Yeah, something like that. I
Is
remember.
is that pretty big in the MMA community, hot yoga?
I, I, I think amongst some people it is for sure. And for us, it was really big just because our MMA gym and the yoga studio shared a space. So it was just really easy to go jump in a yoga class after we were done training or something. And
How does that work? How does that work? So you're like you base as a fighter, you're based out of a gym that you exclusively train at.
I mean, everybody does a little differently. I'd say that's generally what you do. You kind of have a home base, and then maybe like you go out and find guys that are specialists in what they do. But every gym is different.
Yeah.
But yeah, usually you claim a team, and that's you fight out of there.
So why did you come back to Illinois from Austin?
I was recovering from my knee surgery, and I think I had two fights, right? Yeah, two fights at that time. So earlier I said I had one fight and then blew out my knee. I had two fights, and then I was getting ready for my third fight, and then yeah, like 3 weeks before that's when I blew out my knee. So what was the question? I lost my train of thought. I don't remember.
Why did you leave Austin?
Oh, why did I leave Austin? Okay, so I was recovering from my knee surgery. I was working a really shitty job at a retail store, and I just was pretty unhappy. And I realized I got to get really serious about my MMA career. And Austin it's an amazing place, but now it's a little different because there's so many more gyms and stuff. But back then there weren't that many gyms to train out of, and there was a lot of distractions and a lot of partying and stuff going on. So to stay focused and like in MMA or anything like that, you got to be really disciplined and really focused. So I had to get out of there, and I had a job offer back up here teaching jiu-jitsu at the MMA gym. So I said, fuck it. Like, let's go back and get serious about fighting.
Yeah, now you've been teaching for a while. You actually opened up your own studio.
Yeah, I did. I opened up my own gym last year, and yeah, I've just been teaching a lot of classes now. So I'm getting a little bit older. The competitive fighting isn't probably dwindling down my professional career, and now I'm just putting my focus into training people.
Yeah, are you planning on having any more fights?
We'll see. We'll see what I get offered, but I'm not setting anything in stone yet. We'll see. I'll still compete jiu-jitsu and stuff for sure. We just competed a couple weeks ago, but with the MMA fighting, we'll see what happens.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, it seems like it's more popular than ever. Just people training MMA, not even to fight, but just for exercise.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, what was that like starting a studio? Like, do you get mostly people wanting to pursue it, or more people just looking to learn how to defend themselves?
Yeah, I think especially for me, I have a couple kids that want to fight, but that's not our main focus. Just guys that want to stay in shape, want to know how to defend themselves. More than anything, it's just fun. Once you learn how to do it a little bit, especially jiu-jitsu, you're going in the gym. You don't have to get hit in the face. You got to figure your way out of situations, and you get a good workout in too. And like, so yeah, it's mostly just people that just do it for fun and because they love doing it.
Yeah, I've never taken any sort of class. What would like, so if I started and showed up, what would my first day or my first couple weeks look like?
It'd be you just like you go in there and learn the basics really, and every gym does it a little bit differently. But for me, I actually prefer to train guys, especially if we're just talking straight jujitsu, guys that really have no experience because they sometimes you get guys that have been trained for a while, but they just have so many mistakes and things that they have to erase and relearn. So if you take somebody, you just show them the proper technique and the proper like way to do things from the beginning, you get the fastest results. And so, I mean, you would come in, you would learn a couple moves. I don't even suggest like let people really spar their first couple weeks just because you don't know what you're doing. And then it clicks. When you watched it, I remember too, when I was learning, I'd watch it and be like, how the hell do people remember how to do everything? And, you know, where do you put your hand and where do you do this? But I mean, it's kind of intuitive. Like the human body only moves a certain amount of ways, and the way it fits together. Like once you just do a couple repetitions of it, it clicks and you get a feel for it. And be just not as intimidating or hard to learn as I think some people view it, and that's what stops people from coming into the gym, I think.
Yeah, how many people try it out and then never come back?
Honestly, that's very rare.
Okay.
It does happen for sure, but I say a majority of the people when they come in, they already have it set that they want to do it, and then they see that they're not going to get their teeth kicked in, and they're not like entering a gym full of a bunch of meatheads that want to just beat them up, and everyone's super cool and wants to help them learn, and people just like stay. I think the hardest thing is getting people into the door, because people have that image in their head, like they're going to walk into this gym and it's going to be people just kicking each other in the face and just killing each other, and like they kind of want to do it, but they're intimidated. So that's the hardest thing to do, is just get people into the door.
Yeah, it seems like if anything, it brings people a lot closer together.
Definitely too. It does create. This might seem a little cliche, but it definitely creates a brotherhood. And like you go into the gym and you and your buddy wrestle around and spar hard for 5 minutes. The round is over, and then you shake each other's hand afterwards, and it's like like you just said, it makes people closer, and like it's awesome. It's really amazing what I think jiu-jitsu can do for people.
Yeah, every time I've ever fought my brother, we've ended up getting along better afterwards.
Yeah, afterwards, dude, you're like in the mecca of jiu-jitsu too. You should go try jiu-jitsu. At least just give it a try.
I'm 10 minutes from Gracie Academy.
The actual Gracie Academy in Torrance?
The actual one in Torrance, yeah.
Yeah, dude, like that's awesome. You should even just go there just to go there. That's a legendary place.
Yeah, I've been thinking about it. I have a hard enough time making it to yoga every week.
Yeah.
But as the kid gets older, you know, it does.
How old is your kid?
She's 5.5 right now.
5.5. Wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Do you have a kid?
I do. I have a daughter. She just turned 1.
Oh, congratulations.
Thank you.
Yeah. Are you going to get her to roll?
Yeah, she already does.
She already does.
I mean, just not really. I'm just kidding. But
Sure.
Like, we'll bring her to the gym. She watches. She has this bear that it's about 3 times her size, and she just loves to like just grab it and rip it around.
Yeah. How old do you think a kid should be before they even start trying to take any classes?
Honestly, it depends on the kid and how well they can take instruction and learn. Like my best students are 4 and 5 years old. I have 2 kids. I have a 1 4-year-old and 1 5-year-old, and they come in the gym and they are ready to train and like no nonsense. And then you get sometimes these like 10, 11-year-old kids that like they're kind of into it, but they like to be at the gym and goofing off with their friends and joking around, and like, so it all depends on the kid, really. Some places even have their kids training at 3 years old.
Wow.
And it's not super strict training. They're playing games a lot, and they got to make it really fun and just learning some very basic stuff. But I suggest the second your kid is old enough to like understand what's going on, at least just get them involved in it and get them around it. Yeah.
So do you think you like teaching more than fighting?
I love them both in completely different ways.
Sure.
Yeah, fighting is or competing at anything at a very high level is extremely selfish. Like you have to be insanely selfish to get where you want to be, just because that's the nature of it. Because if you're not making sacrifices to put in the work, the guy that you're going to compete against is. And so to be at that level, you have to frickin' sacrifice everything. But then on the other side, teaching is like, it's giving back, and it's not about me. It's about my students, and it's about how well they're progressing and how well they're benefiting. So they're both amazing. I love them both, but it's just two totally different things. Like going into a fight and winning is great and it's awesome, but teaching a group of kids how to do jiu-jitsu who literally knew nothing, and then 6 months later they're doing techniques and going to tournaments and being successful. It's really remarkable to watch.
Yeah. Do you think, do you hope to have some students that you can end up coaching and watching them go to fight?
Yeah, I mean, I already do.
Okay.
And yeah, it's cool. I don't have I have one kid, he's getting ready for his first MMA fight. And MMA is a little different than jiu-jitsu, just so if everybody's clear on that. Jiu-jitsu, there's no striking. It's just wrestling, really, with submission holds, and a little bit different rule set than your usual like high school wrestling. And MMA obviously is everything. And I don't suggest kids doing MMA. At least, like, they can train and learn how to punch and learn how to fight, but kids should not be punching each other and doing stuff like that.
And so you competed in MMA, not just jiu-jitsu.
Correct.
And so do you have like supplemental training on top of jiu-jitsu?
Oh yeah, I mean, for me, jiu-jitsu was like my main style.
Yeah.
Like I was definitely a submission fighter, but yeah, I mean, for MMA to fight at that level, you got to do everything. You got to know how to wrestle. You got to know how to strike. You have to have a freaking elite strength and conditioning program. You got to have a nutritionist. You got to, I mean, it's a very, very competitive, high-level sport that you got to do freaking everything.
Sure. So for the people you're coaching, do you have all that in-house at your studio, or do you kind of?
Yeah, I mean, we do a lot of it. But anything that we can't do, for sure. I know some gyms and some places that we can go to get different work in, and definitely get different sparring partners too. I think that is a big thing. Just because if you train with the same guy every day, you're going to learn each other and going to get comfortable and know each other's tendencies. So, if you take a guy out of that and put him in with a totally different dude, there's that anxiousness of not knowing the guy and not being friends with him. So it does create more of a real training atmosphere.
Sure.
So definitely you got to do cross training for sure.
Are there also just jiu-jitsu competitions?
Oh yeah, jiu-jitsu competitions are getting huge too. It's not like it was before. There's I mean, you can make decent money competing just jiu-jitsu without even doing the MMA part now. And it's all over the world.
Seems like with all the backlash of like the NFL, the MMA might be the next target as far as people trying to clamp down on how hurt you can voluntarily get.
Yeah.
What do you see coming down the line with that stuff?
What do you mean, like how hurt you can get?
Yeah, do you think MMA will stay as it is, or do you think they'll change the rules so people don't, to avoid some of the more extreme injuries you can get? Or do you think there will be a bigger focus on jiu-jitsu since it's not as much about striking?
But they're two totally different worlds. And they're definitely in MMA. I think people are getting a lot smarter and safer with the way that they train. Not so much with how they fight, because the fight's the fight. Mm-hmm. But the big concern now is with head trauma, and especially with football players, like you're seeing later on in guys' careers or after they're retired, having CTE and anything where there's a lot of head trauma. So the big thing that, like, with all the training going into a fight, I mean, you're sparring hard. At least back in the day, we used to spar really hard 2 times a week. And, so you're getting hit in the head consistently. And then you got to go fight on top of that. You don't really know the repercussions of that until, further down the line. And so I think people are getting smarter and safer with their training, not taking as big a hits in the practice and kind of saving their brain for the fights.
Sure. Yeah, and it seems also like the fights just keep getting bigger and bigger. At what point can they not outdo themselves anymore?
Yeah, I don't think there ever is a point.
Yeah, there's always going to be some new hype or some new challenge that people didn't see coming.
Yeah, and the athletes only just get better, really. And the level of technique just gets higher, and it's just the evolution,
Yeah, the stakes are so high. I've the few matches I've ever watched, you can train as hard as you want, but one wrong move and you get a punch into the jaw and you're done.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. That's the crazy thing about the game is like you just said, you can have a perfect training camp, you can have a perfect everything, and you go in the fight, and at that level, the first person to make the mistake loses. It just happened a couple weeks ago. Stephen Thompson was fighting Anthony Pettis, and kind of it was winning the fight. He was a lot bigger than Anthony Pettis. Anthony Pettis was fighting up in a higher weight class. Stephen Thompson was winning the fight. Anthony didn't look too good, and then he made an error in his range and with his defense, and Pettis hit him one time with a Superman punch and knocked him out cold. Wow. That was the whole fight.
Yeah. Do you think the popularity of MMA is increasing the number of like street fights happening, or lowering it because people are worried they don't know who knows what?
I don't know how many street fights are happening. I try to stay away from all that shit. I hate that stuff.
Yeah,
and I'd probably say it increases it because anytime, at least in my experience, anytime there's a UFC on and you go watch at the bar, you got some freaking jabronis wearing affliction shirts, like start shouting at each other, thinking they're tougher.
Sure.
And probably does actually increase fights.
But within the MMA community, it's a pretty there's like some strong principles against fighting unless absolutely necessary.
Yeah, I think for sure. I just think as a general rule, like if somebody knows how to fight, they're not out trying to get in fights. Like
right.
people who know how to fight realize like fighting is dangerous, especially street fighting, because like street fighting is stupid as shit. So unless you're like, yeah, there's no reason to go fight. It's normally people who just don't know how to fight acting silly.
Yeah, I mean, we've all seen it happen.
Yeah, although I've seen because I think MMA is getting more so like kind of the WWE route, which I totally hate because they're trying to get more viewers. So they kind of stage this drama and shit talking between fighters. So like all that stuff is fake, but the fighting is still real, and the fighters are still like, they're fighters. They're not freaking golfers. You know, that's what they do for a living. So
right.
like it's starting to happen more and more. Like guys will talk shit, and then the other guy was like, well, you know, you said it, like back it up. And I think that type of thing is happening more.
And so it goes.
Yeah. So pretty much just keep your mouth shut unless you want to fight.
Right. So where's your studio at?
It is in Hanover Park in the old hood.
Illinois, northwest
yes.
Suburbs of Chicago.
Northwest, right. You know where the old Caputo's is at?
Yeah, right.
Right next to Caputo's. I'm next to Timeout Sports Bar.
By Stogie's.
Right. I'm on the same side as Stogie's.
It seems like information that everybody should at least be somewhat knowledgeable about. You should know how to choke someone out.
100%. I think just to like know what you're capable of as a freaking human being.
Yeah.
Like, and just the knowledge of like, no one will probably ever have to use it, and that's the way it should be. But just the knowledge of knowing like you can protect yourself if need be, I think makes you even less of a victim, because I think people that are looking to prey on people look for people that look like they're victims and look like they're vulnerable.
Sure.
So it's all about how you carry yourself, really.
Yeah. Do you have a lot of girls come to your studio?
I do actually. And it's awesome. I think it's even harder for girls too, because it's got to be intimidating to go to a gym where there's a bunch of guys, you know, that are there to, you know, freaking grapple each other. And then it's you're the small woman that has to learn how to do it. But shit, if you can like hold your own in a room full of guys, like no one's going to do anything to you.
Well, hey, Dennis, thanks for talking on the podcast, and good luck.
Well, John, thanks for having me, man. It was awesome. It was good to talk to you.